going to finally begin our class. I apologize. Next time I will ask Charles to help me set up, and it's going to be different. So, I think really in the last bunch of weeks we've been talking a lot about the relationship between God and the Jewish people, and that's been a big part of our conversation. And so that's kind of where we're going to pick up in this big Parsha of the Ten Commandments, and everything that happens here. So we're going to start the beginning of chapter 19 of Exodus. Chapter 19 of Exodus, page 436. And we're going to read the beginning part, and then we'll see how far we get.
436.
And this is in the context of, right, the God we got to know, who said to us, "You're going to get to know me." And then the plagues happened, and then the sea happened, and what did it mean to get to know this God? The self of all selves. And also the God who acts in the world however we want to imagine it or know it. Something I read recently, I might have mentioned this before, right? There's a place in Psalms where it says, Hashket, be still or be quiet and know that I am God. And a comment on that was once made. It says, be still and know that I am God, not be still and think about that I am God or talk about that I am God. So on some level, we're doing a lot of talking, but right, it's knowledge where this could happen at some level.
Now, what about the I you're talking about? Know that I am God. Which I are you talking about? Are you talking about an I that you can experience yourself? Or are you talking about some other being's I?
Well, right now we're talking about it, so we can't talk about it. We can only know it. But you're right. It's the same. The eye of all eyes is the same as the eye of the universe, and it's a mystery. But there's all kinds of wonderful things that happen, and that eye has done over the years, both inner and outer. Would you mind closing the door over there?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, thanks. So I'm going to ask Alan to please begin. Reading for us chapter 19, verse 1.
On the third new moon after the Israelites had gone forth from the land of Egypt, on that very day they entered the wilderness of Sinai. Having journeyed from Rephidim, they entered the wilderness of Sinai and encamped in the wilderness. Israel encamped there in front of the mountain, and Moses went up to God. The Lord called to him from the mountain, saying, "Thus shall you say to the house of Jacob and declare to the children of Israel, you have seen what I did to the Egyptians, how I bore you on eagle's wings and brought you to me. Now then, if you will obey me faithfully and keep my covenant, you shall be my treasured possession among all the peoples. Indeed, all the earth is mine, but you shall be to me a kingdom of priests and a holy nation."
Wow.
These are the words that you shall speak to the children of Israel. Moses came and summoned the elders of the people and put before them all that the Lord had commanded him. All the people answered as one, saying, "All that the Lord has spoken, we will do." And Moses brought back the people's words to the Lord. And the Lord said to Moses, "I will come to you in a thick cloud, in order that the people may hear when I speak with you, and so trust you ever after." And Moses reported the people's words to the Lord, and the Lord.
Let's go stop there for now. There's so much going on here.
I have a question.
Sure.
I never noticed this before in this one, but, and Moses went up to God, period. The Lord called to him. Why does it change God and then the Lord? Do you know why they do that?
I don't know. I mean, there's many.
Out of order. It's the
There's
same
many
entity.
interpretations.
Yeah.
There's many ways of looking at it. And many ways it's been interpreted. If you're asking from the point of view of the text, I don't, from the point of view of the purest sense, it's hard to know why in the same verse. So when
Yeah, that's what's confusing,
because
it's the same sentence.
the same
right?
sentence,
Yeah.
right? So sometimes in others, when there's different sentences, the scholars will
Notice
say
it or
where it's
pay
different.
attention. Yeah.
I mean, in general, this is a bit of a weird beginning because there's a repetition here, right? On the third new moon, after the Israelites had gone forth from the land of Egypt, on that very day, they entered the wilderness of Sinai. And having journeyed from Rephidim, they entered the wilderness of Sinai and encamped in the wilderness. Israel encamped there in front of the mountain. It's a lot of repetition of those two, three verses, right? How many times do you have to know that they were in Sinai? How many times do you have to know they're in the wilderness
Camping, yeah.
and then camping and everything? I don't know, what's your vibe going into this whole situation here? How is it being set up? How does it feel to you as you read, as you?
Making
hear
it important to me,
Yeah, making it important. What are some of the things that make it feel important?
the repetition,
Yeah,
make sure you get it, that this was a big deal.
it's interesting, isn't it? How repetition can build something up to feel special, right? You know, if you just say, and they got to Sinai and God spoke to them, it moves too quickly. You know, when you're telling a story, it's when you're telling a story, you know, when you have a good storyteller, they actually repeat a lot, right? It's like whenever I tell the bar and bat mitzvah students to write a speech, I tell them it's not like when you're writing an essay. When you're writing an essay, you don't want to repeat the same word in the same sentence or a lot because it looks bad. You know, you read it, it looks bad to repeat the same word. But in a speech, repetition of the same words builds a certain sense of rhythm and something. Yeah, intention.
More interesting that they use God and the Lord. And
Well,
it
is
sort of
that-
makes you pay attention, I think.
Isn't the Hebrew word the same? This is just a different translation, or is the Hebrew word different that they're referring to?
The Hebrew is Elohim and Adonai and Yud He Vav He. And you know, so we have all these traditions about what these two words mean.
Too.
You know, you could say, the Moses went up to God, you know, and Elohim is the God of nature, right? It's the God, and Yud He Vav He transcends everything. It's the highest. It's the I am that I am, the pure being, grounded being, or however you want to look at it. What does it mean? So let's go back. Let's go look at this. And you know, the other thing, we're going to read this in Rashi, but on that very day they entered the wilderness. What does that mean, that very day? You know, why does it say that very day? It's also building a sense of importance, a sense of, you know, something special is happening here.
Well, that they didn't do anything else, it was specific, precise.
Beautiful, right? Or
And
you're
you know
building,
what, if you read something
yeah.
and it's one sentence, you go on to something else, you probably forget what you read, so this is making sure you got
Yes.
it.
There's a progression, right? That's really telling you
Yeah,
they're coming to the mountain and they're encamping and they're this and you know there's
it's
a
a
sense of
specific time, everything is right.
everything is right, everything is specific, right? Telling you the exact moment. It's beautiful storytelling, right? It's really doing a good job of showing you this
But
is
there's
this.
internal story too, right? I mean, there's an internal progression that probably in the soul of Moses or the internal aspect of Moses that has to do with this external trip, right?
Uh-huh.
I
I
mean,
mean,
with the
And
people too. The people too are going on this journey, this spiritual journey of
Moses-
bonding.
right, it says Moses ascended to God. Do you think he went up 55 steps on the mountain, or it was some other form of ascent that they're talking about? How do people ascend to God? They don't climb a mountain most of the time. They ascend to God and God descends to them. Anyway, but so there's an internal, I think to really understand this properly, you have to understand the internal experience of Moses as he's ascending. He's also saying, you've seen what I did to the Egyptians and how I bore you on eagle's wings. Why eagle's wings?
Yeah, I wondered about that too. Why choose a hawk? Because they fly high, right? They fly really high, but they're lone birds. They don't flock, right?
Well,
Eagles are very solitary.
but he's also talking about that internal thing too.
even before that, the Lord called to him from the mountain. What does that even mean? That God called to him from the mountain? Where did where did this come from? How is this all happening? So we're also balancing two things. We're balancing how we understand spiritual experience, and but we're also balancing if God wanted to create a moment that would be remembered for eternity, God wants to make it dramatic. So maybe, can God make his voice come from the mountain just so we then can write it came from the mountain? Can God do these things? So that's it's useful to keep both of those conversations going, because of course, for us, what's interesting is how we hear God's voice within our own self too. That's also what's
Well, if
interesting.
you've ever stood on top of a mountain, you
Yeah.
definitely feel closer to God. I mean, we took
that's
a
for sure.
helicopter ride and landed on a mountain in Alaska
Beautiful.
that was really way high up, and there was a definite feeling of a spiritual thought.
Mountains are very beautiful, and there's something very powerful about. So when a little story, but when I spent my year living in Nepal, and there were a lot of mountains over there, obviously, and I was with Jewish and Israeli volunteers for this humanitarian aid organization I was working with, and we would send a bunch of them to little villages in the mountains to kind of live as and help the local people and teach them English and introduce new agricultural techniques and stuff. But they'd go up in these little rickety buses on the roofs, up into really high places and mountains where they were living in mud huts and stuff. And one experience we would have is that all the people who would go to the mountains, as opposed to people who would send down to the plains, would have this unique experience. They really would. And they'd come back transformed. Even after 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, they were totally different. And part of it was living very rugged, but they would also, these people would go on these, like in those places in Nepal, the school children, their school is like 1 hour climb, 1,000, 2,000 feet up to go to school and down. And so even to go to different parts of the village, you have to walk, 30 minutes straight up. And so these people in these villages that we'd send there would get really strong and, powerful legs, because they'd be going up and down every day to different parts of the village. And, people who were before were not in fit would be really fit. And so one of them, a young Israeli guy who was also a filmmaker, him and I wanted to make a film about ascending, and we wanted to call it Mati Jancha, which means up I go in Nepalese, because there is something about ascending with like a lot, right, in Hebrew, to go up. There's something about going up that has a powerful connotation in time and space spiritually too, for the experience of ascending, whatever that means. I mean, you close your eyes, how do you ascend with your eyes closed? But somehow you have that experience of going up and going down, and hell is always depicted as down and heaven is always depicted as up. Why? It's just somehow to do with our experience of spirit, that up feels more refined, more holy, more expansive, and down feels like you're going into the dregs and not where you want to be.
We falling asleep. So to fall to sleeping, you fall. Okay, that's the opposite of ascending. So does everybody go to hell every time they go? I mean, some people do, but it's interesting. I mean, the rabbi's absolutely right that the inner experience of this has to do with some sort of ascending and descending.
And so there's the aspect of Moses, when Moses is ascending and having this experience. We'll get to that in a moment. And there's also the children of Israel, right? The children of Israel they've come from traveling from the Red Sea. They've come from their experience of leaving slavery. And now they're finally, okay, why did I leave Egypt? I've been told that I left Egypt for this moment. I know I have to go to some promised land afterwards, but this is here. So the very well-known commentary here is from verse number 2, where it says in the Hebrew, right? They journeyed from Rephidim, and they came to the wilderness of Sinai, and then it says, and there encamped Israel before the mountain. And so the commentary is that the word for encamped here is suddenly in the singular. Why is it in the singular? Why the encamped? and it's to give you a sense of the journey of the Jewish people, that they were as one. So if you, let's actually look a little bit. Let's actually look a little bit at this in our. We're going to look a little bit in our commentary. Rashi, and so because the verb to encamp is in the singular, Rashi says, and there Israel encamped as one man with one mind. One of the most important comments in the whole Torah that Rashi makes. But all their other encampments were made in a murmuring spirit and a spirit of dissension.
I mean, prior to getting to this.
Or afterwards too. What does it mean to encamp one man with one mind? When do you have that experience? When have you ever had that experience of being in a collective and of having a sense of one mind and one spirit?
When I was climbing up the mountain in Africa to go see the gorillas.
Uh-huh.
I mean, it was like
Wow.
an hour and a half, almost 2 hours to climb up there. There were 10 of us plus the guides.
Wow.
And it is, you have to totally be focused on each other and where you're
beautiful.
going and where you're stepping and what your purpose is. And it is
Mm.
one, all are one.
You really felt that
Oh
you were
my
all
God,
as
yes.
one because of how steep it was,
Oh,
or
yeah.
just
Oh, wow. It was really steep. The
Amazing.
gorillas don't walk around on the ground. They're up high in the mountains.
That sounds like a wonderful experience. Well, singularity of purpose, like a.
Right.
So yours is kind of out of necessity, right?
Out of necessity, but it becomes exciting.
It becomes exciting. You're going to do something amazing. You're going to check
Right,
out the
yeah.
gorillas. Beautiful.
So out of necessity, you have a singularity of experience, which means that your subject, the subjectivity that you feel as an I, as a person who's there, is identical to the other people around you. And you feel that identity of subjectivity. Is that what it was like, Norma?
Absolutely.
Some of your sense of your own sense of individuality is kind of merged.
With theirs.
Right.
And anybody else, other places where you feel that collective.
This isn't kind of spiritual, but I think back,
Yeah, it doesn't have to be.
I think about the one and only Bulls game that I went to.
Uh-huh.
And you get this arena, or the United Center,
Right.
full of people, and you get loud music and everybody's yelling and everybody's getting in the spirit, and you're all kind of melding into one.
See, it is
It
spiritual.
can be overwhelming
Crowds, yeah.
because it's so loud and all. And of course, they only play things with deep bass, so it's boom, 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 and your heart is beating, and
That's
it's, and that's the thing that immediately comes to mind is, you have 30,000 people or 20,000 people or whatever, all coming together as one for this basketball team.
Yeah, our experience was walking in the Amazon jungle. There's 6 of us and a guide. And we all had to be very, very quiet. And we had to watch each other's backs because of, dangerous things that were flying around. And just
Slippery.
the rustle of all the different trees there, and watching out for the red ants. So sometimes you had to walk with your legs apart, and we had these big rubber boots on, but I mean, we were there as a team.
It's interesting because in some ways these days the big crowd experiences of collectiveness we have are concerts maybe, or political rallies can be them, or it can be sports games. One that came to mind, which is a negative, right? But the Nazis and the Nuremberg, the rallies they had there, where they kind of like mass hypnotized the people who were there with music and the way they spoke and the way it was all very deliberate, right? The symbols, And it was all like a mass experiences that hypnotized the Germans into, doing what they did, right? The following.
How about like
I'm,
Howard, when he was an anesthesiologist, I think the surgeon and the anesthesiologist and the technicians they're of one mind. They're all concentrating in the same.
In any surgical team, you have to be,
Yeah,
right? 'Cause
right.
I want to say,
They're very plastic then, so we can melt into other people, we can melt into groups. And that's sort of very interesting that we can do that. So so what we're so covetous of is our own personal I, and this own personal I is not so personal after all.
Go ahead, Phil.
yeah, thank you. I want to just thank you directly for raising the Nazis as the negative example, because I didn't want to be the one to always make that kind of a remark. And I really appreciated it, because I always find that as a possible reading of a situation, and as sometimes a very terrifying one. So I appreciate your mentioning that. I remember having the opposite feeling myself in a march in Chicago that had famously not gotten a permit from Mayor Richard J. Daley at the time of the Democratic Convention in 1968. I won't go into the politics of it, but I felt it necessary to go to this peace march, and I attended it, and it was interesting. But the thing I want to mention was that at some point, a lot of people started to chant when the police were coming up, and they were not pleased with the march. The streets belong to the people. And it was a very powerful rhythmic chant. The streets belong to the people. And I'm there and I'm thinking, well, that's all very well, but which people do they belong to? Because there were a lot of people there. There were the police, and maybe the streets belong to them, or the people who agreed with the police. So there's always that possibility. And it's stuck in my mind since then as a watchword.
Well, then you brought rational thought to that particular experience, so you couldn't really participate in it, right?
In a certain sense, David, that's exactly right. But that's like saying that's dangerous to go that far, because that's like saying you can't participate in this political activity without
always rational thought. But I'm not saying you shouldn't be rational. I'm just saying that rational thought interferes with that experience.
No, I agree. I agree that I understand that's what you're saying, and I agree with it. But at some point, it's useful for people to participate in something. Yeah.
Of course it is.
Well, the sense, I mean, why in the text itself, this whole thing of encampment in a singular actually makes sense. It's just a midrashic thing, because it says Israel is singular. So but what later it does say, we read this, right? It says they answered as one. So even the Torah brings a sense of the oneness of the people through this experience, right? They answered as one. And so the part of why this aspect of the collective experience is so highlighted to some degree in the text, but by later rabbis very much, is because what is it that ties a group of people together? It's shared experience. And this, I mean, the bondage in Egypt too is a shared experience, but this is the shared experience of the Jewish people, and to some degree also of other faiths that come out of Judaism, right? The experience of the Ten Commandments is a shared experience that's somehow in our collective bones. And so if you read, imagine if you read here, 50% said yes, and 49% said no, and 1% said maybe, it wouldn't be as powerful, it would have a big down the road effect on how we view ourselves. But the fact that it was a unitive experience gives us at least something we can agree on, and so even if as Jews we can't all agree on what exactly happened there theologically, but we can. But this story is a uniting story on some level, because of we were all there and they all encamped, and even the ones who complain later where's my fish and where's my cucumber and where's my garlic? Okay, well, you didn't say that when you were at Sinai, you said yes. So, there's a level of, where shared experience is important, and just like it is in the synagogue or in any community, we come together for Kol Nidre, and we come together for these big experiences, and in those moments, it doesn't matter what we believe about different things, and that's really important.
This, it seems to me, is a shared experience with the divinity in the center, also sharing the experience. Isn't that the way it's written?
Yeah, it's, so what's Moses' role? Moses is kind of like a facilitator, maybe. And Moses is the back and forth. He's making the shidduch at this moment, right? Moses is making the shidduch, and he's saying, well, what do you say? What do you say? God likes you. What do you say? Well, I like God back. Okay, let's let this happen. meet you in the back. Meet you in the back stairs. But it's romantic, and the language of romance is there. So God called to Moses from the mountain. Moses, this is, last time God spoke to Moses on Sinai was in this little bush, but now God's voice is thundering through the mountain. However we want to see that, there's a whole experience of love here. And then so, thus shall you say to the children of Israel, declare to the children of Israel. To me, as much as the 10 Commandments, which is why I decided to focus on this for our reading, these words are very carefully chosen. And you guys already picked up on it. You have seen what I did to the Egyptians, how I bore you on eagle's wings and brought you to me. Why did God choose those words? As this is the proposal, right? This is like, go tell Israel, before you say, I want to meet you behind the stairs and let's make this boyfriend, girlfriend, why I want to tell you what I like about them or what I did for them. Why are these the words that God picked?
But isn't that kind of a warning?
Okay. You think
What I did to them, you better follow my words or you'll be in trouble.
So there is an element of warning in this, and I actually didn't include this comment, but there's a comment by Orachaim who says, what, God could have spoken to us with just total love. I love you, I love you, I love you. Or God could have just been the message of, I'm your master, do this or else. And God kind of picked an in-between kind of language, because if God just said, I love you, I love you, I love you, then you maybe take God for granted and don't listen too much. And if you could just God say, listen or else, then that closes down certain elements of the relationship, right? It's you need a mixture. This is a traditional Jewish view. I don't love it, but it's a mixture of awe and love. You always have to have a bit of love, a bit of awe. If you just have love, then you don't. With your children, if you're all love, love, love all the time, they don't take you seriously. If you're all the time, then your relationship is limited. You have to have a little bit of everything. So that's the way they see it.
Well, you have to have a little bit of everything, and you have to be in the middle of everything. You have to be in the center of everything, so that you can only appreciate everything or both sides of the thing if you're in the center of it. And that's the place. That's sort of the secret spot.
God's reminding them about how powerful he was in Egypt. He doesn't want them to forget that.
Well, but then there's the awe on the other side. That's what the rabbi is saying. The rabbi is saying that both sides, that in the classical Jewish view, both sides have to be taken into account. But the only place, and all I'm saying is the only place that you can take both sides into account is being in between both of them, in the middle.
So there's the middle, and so what Norma was saying was, watch out, because you saw what I did to the Egyptians. And what Bonnie is saying, it's also saying, I am the real deal. I'm the real deal God. I took you out of Egypt. Look what I did to the Egyptians. I'm a pretty powerful God. Take me. Don't take any. Why would you take any other God when you've got a God who's able to do all of that, right? I can be your boyfriend. Look at my car. Look how nice my car is, you know. I've got the best car ever, you know. It can, you know, I'm better than
And the other
Joe's
one.
car and the other car, and look how fast it goes. I bore you with eagle's wings, you know, and I'm gonna protect you, and look how strong I am, and you know, nobody will bother you if I'm your boyfriend, you know, but I don't know if any of you saw the Fablemans, but I was thinking about the
We
Yeah.
did.
Well, yeah, it's clear too that it's only something divine and exterior in some sense that has that power of action. That you yourself do not have that power of action. That your eye, your center doesn't have that power of action. So something that's going to act in this sort of precipitous, dramatic way has to be beyond your control too. So, you know, so it adds the dimension of you're dealing with something that's really beyond your control.
and how off-filled, you know, you are, you
Right.
know, you know, the voice is shaking the mountain, is going about to shake the mountain, and it's reminding you, look what I am the God who did you out of Egypt, and I bore you on eagle's wings. You said eagles are the most powerful birds. We had this in the comments, right? It's the king of the birds on some level. It's also the one, I mean, even other birds of praise can be scared of eagles, because eagles are bigger and, you know,
They have
stronger.
a huge
They have a huge
wingspan.
and they also bear their wing, they bear their young on top of their wings, I think, when they're teaching them how to fly. So the sense of tremendous protection, of being able of expanse, and of being able to see everything, and of being the apex, you know, the apex of the.
The Philadelphia football team has the Eagles, you know, as
Yeah.
their symbol, and these guys are all running around, women too, with hats, with eagles on them, and the wings spread out and
Oh, really?
shake when they
Well,
walk.
you know, in Ezekiel's sort of prophetic image, the eagle is one of the faces of the four creatures. There's the eagle, the ox, the lion, and the cherub or the man. So the eagle is a big deal. I mean, so if you're looking at Ezekiel, sort of looking at somehow, and somehow people think the four faces are like the Tetragrammaton.
There's the Romans, right? America, you know, these are all powerful empires that shows eagles as symbols.
But if you see them fly, you can understand. Oh,
Yeah, no, they're majestic.
It is,
They're
right.
totally majestic.
So the eagle in the sky is like the lion on the earth.
Exactly, yeah. Like the lion on the earth. It's all powerful.
yeah.
It's like a lion, but it flies, you know, it's above you. It's so in traditional Judaism, the eagle becomes the Shekhinah, right? The divine presence over you, watching over, you know, like a mother bird over you always. So we have this first sentence, then we have the second sentence. Now, if you will obey me faithfully and keep my covenant, you shall be my treasured possession, my sigula among all the peoples. Indeed, all the earth is mine. Let's not focus on obeying faithfully, keeping my covenant, but what does it mean to be a treasured possession? A treasure, you will be my treasure.
No, don't you
Among
think
all
of
the
your
peoples.
child like that?
Okay,
When you think of Shalva and Adib, they're your
you're my
treasures.
treasures, you're my treasure.
I wasn't concentrating on the treasure, I was concentrating on the possession,
Possession.
because that's a very different connotation than, you know, as you were saying before, the friends or lovers or whatever, you know, possession is ownership. And, you know, that's God saying that I own you.
Yeah. That doesn't sound.
I
as
own
good.
you, I can do with you what I please.
They say, it's giving you a choice, you can enter into that. It's,
That doesn't sound as
But-
good, Alan.
I don't think so. I think if you've got a treasure, what happens is you keep your eye on it all the time. I think that's what we're talking about. We're talking about that God has chosen these people and he's going to keep his eye on them because they are his treasure. I don't see anything malicious in that particular thing.
it's not malicious malicious. I agree. It's not malicious, but it's intense. If you tell, you know, your
Isn't it?
spouse, you know, or you tell your new girlfriend, you know,
My possession.
you're my treasure. You know, the segula, they did translate it as possession. It doesn't say possession. It says my treasure.
As long as the
but it-
treasure is there,
But it
right?
says treasure, but it says you're my treasure. You're my treasure. It is a little possessive, right? It's possessive. You're
Valuable.
possessive.
Yeah.
It just is.
Is treasure possessive, or does treasure have its own independent being that makes it a treasure? If the treasure is completely possessive, then the treasure ceases to be a treasure to the possessor. I mean, think about it. Would you want a treasure that you could completely assimilate and make disappear and destroy at any moment? I mean, it has to have some independence.
I think it's showing that people are the most important thing to the Lord. Treasures.
Well, you
You
mean
are
more
my
than one
treasure.
treasure, yeah, sure. I mean, that has that quality, sure.
Could I introduce something from Alter on that point? Because that word segula, treasure, is so interesting. And if I might, just very,
Sure, go ahead.
because this comes from a different source of learning. He says, segula, as Yitzhak Avishur has pointed out, is paired in a Ugaritic document. So we're talking about Canaanite documents of the time of the earliest days of Hebrew documents, and maybe earlier. It's paired with vassal, with eved, and seems to be a term borrowed from that is servant, seems to be a term borrowed from the realm of precious objects for contexts of covenants. The faithful vassal becomes the cherished treasure of the sovereign. Because the Lord is, as he declares here, sovereign of all the earth, it is his prerogative to privilege one people among the many as a special treasure. So that's putting it in the context of not of an earlier cultural idea that might have come out of a covenantal relationship with a unquestionably superior Lord.
And that's what
That's prior to this, to the relationship we were talking about. So the human relationship with the sovereign is prior to the relationship with the divine, or is that what you're saying?
It's whatever the source of it is, it's modeled. They had an understanding of a relationship that's modeled on, or at least imaged in, a certain human relationship of Lord and vassal, or Lord and man.
And I think it's obviously very true, and that's why this translation says treasure possession.
Yeah.
But also say, think of if one takes away that barrier with the text and enters into it, what does it feel for a God, for divine presence to tell you as a people, you're my treasured people, my vassal? You know, it makes it a little bit. I mean, it's still sweet. Maybe it's a tiny bit legalistic too, but there is. I mean, it's still. It's true. A lot of the scholarship likes to take the sweetness out of the love language here, and the later rabbinic tradition likes to add the sweetness and make it more and more lovey-dovey. And a lot of the scholarship is saying this is all very functional. You know, you've been given a status by the King of Kings to be a treasured nation.
And when it was written, people weren't picking on what every little word meant.
But I think Phil makes a good point. We're looking at this from the perspective of 21st century Americans who have a sense of democratic governance, right? And that's not what Phil's saying at all. Phil is saying that according to, if I'm understanding you correctly, that that at the time that this was written, or maybe even before the time this was written, before Israel even had relationships with kings, right? Because they were wandering around being ruled by prophets for generations before they asked Samuel for a king. So they may not have at the time had that sense individual, as a nation of, we have a king and we are vassals to a king. That's not who the people were at the time that this story occurs. At the time this story occurs, it's a very different people. So I can understand. And also, if I were living in, 2000 or 2500 BCE at this point, hearing this, I might feel treasured. I mean, because the Israelites, they don't have a king at this time. God is trying to become that king for them, right? And I think that this is part of the process, but
That's exactly the opposite of what Phil
Yeah,
said.
Phil is saying the opposite. He's saying that in the language of that time, they would have recognized that this was language of fiefdom,
Right.
that this was common ancient Near Eastern language. How familiar the Jewish people would have been if, they are living in a world where, so the God is saying, I'm going to make you my favorite kind of little nation, which is still nice, still better than being the nation that just got destroyed and drowned in the sea. But there is, as I was saying, there is this big thing to look at it with, the word love, ahava, which we think of love Valentine's Day, but in the context of the Bible, it's loyalty, it's a different kind. But again, we can't be 100% sure. We just don't know. We're trying to imagine, but there is, and it's why the rabbis also see it here. And there's one of the most intense midrashes on this is that God took the mountain and flipped it upside down, raised it in the air, and put it above the heads of the people and said, "Will you be my treasured nation?" And the people said,
Anything.
okay, because they didn't have, so there is how much, what is going on here?
But Nancy's view is the more original view, I think. Nancy, I think your view is the way you expressed it seemed to be the opposite of Phil's. Phil's was saying that the human is the model.
I wasn't saying, but can I interrupt for a second? Because I don't have a view. I was only presenting, the reason I quoted from Alter is that I thought that was because he was discussing the historical understanding of what terms meant 1500 BCE.
Okay.
And I think that was useful. Now, I'm not trying to champion it, but Nancy was fair in explaining that, but it's not and I think the point about democracy is that she made is a very good one. And we don't want to get carried away by going too far, but the history of and the reason for the Ugaritic is the Ugaritic texts that were translated in the early 20th century some of them are very similar to our Psalms, very, very similar. In fact, some of them are thought to be models for the Psalms. So it's not that they were unknown at some point. But that's all I wanted to say. I'm sorry to interrupt you, David. I just wanted
But Nancy said, I think is very nice. I actually like it as a foil to Alter, because what Nancy is saying is that, hey, they don't have a king, so how do they know what this language is? Maybe to them, and however, they just like to be called a treasure nation. I like to be called a treasure nation. Why not? It feels good. They were taking it in a different language. They weren't in the language of kings. So I want to get into our commentary before our time is up. So let's go to page 4.
Whoever put this together is.
Sheila
little dyslexic.
So we're going to go to page 4. Rabbeinu Bachya. Who's going to read?
Which one?
Page 4, Rabbeinu Bachya. You might have to go upside down. All right. And our handout was printed out in the
All right, which is the one you want read?
on page 4, Rabbeinu Bachya.
Oh, okay. You have seen what I have done to Egypt. At the onset, God explained to the Jewish people that the matter of his personal benevolent supervision of their fate is the basic tenet of Judaism and the Torah. When God sets out to punish one nation for their sins and to save another nation from them on account of its merits, this is one of the miracles which is part of God's special supervision and of the whole concept of reward and punishment. In order to underline this, God reminded the Israelites by saying, look what I have done to Egypt. God performed all this in front of the eyes of the Israelites so that they would have visual evidence of his personal involvement in their fate. God contrasted what he had done to the Egyptians with what he had done to the Israelites when he continued with, I have carried you on eagle's wings and brought you to me, to this mountain. The simile was meant to describe how God protected the Israelites just as eagle protected its young. Mecholita Bakodesh item 2 describes the simile of the eagle in these words. An eagle, the king of the birds, is not afraid of another bird attacking it from above, but is afraid of an arrow from below. Therefore, the eagle carries its young on its wings, whereas other birds carry their young in their claws below their wings, as they fear that an eagle might swoop down upon them from above.
I'm not sure how true this is from the point of view of, I'm not sure if eagles are worried about arrows or not, but I won't know. Let's continue. Rashi, do you mind continuing on page 5, Rona? Segula.
Segula, okay.
Page 5. Rashi means a cherished treasure, the same as Ecclesiastes 2:8, and the treasure of kings, costly vessels and precious stones, which kings store up. In the same manner, shall ye be unto me a cherished treasure more than other people. Now, do not say that ye alone belong to me, and that I have no other peoples together with besides you. And what else? Therefore have I, by which the special love I bear you can be made evident. This is not so.
And then Ibn Ezra, do you mind reading the next bit? Ibn Ezra, the word segula.
Yeah. The word segula, treasure, means something precious, lovely, and unique.
So if we actually went to the second comment, I didn't read it, but it was talking about all the repetition that we had at the beginning. And it also commentator, Orach Chaim, on verse why did the Torah repeat it again? Perhaps you can explain this in terms of the statement in Sanhedrin that love has a tendency to disregard normal rules. As a result of love, what took place later may be reported earlier. Inasmuch as the day the Israelites accepted the Torah was the day that God had been waiting for ever since he created the universe. It is understandable that the Torah reported the arrival of this day at the earliest possible moment. This explains the emphasis of the Torah on this day they arrived. The arrival describes the meeting of the lover and his beloved. Heaven and earth both rejoice that this day had arrived at last.
And in that Rufino Dakia, what I had said that it was a warning, in a way, the way this presents it is a more gentle way of saying, I just want to remind you of what I did to Egypt.
Exactly. I want to remind you that that I'm the real deal.
Yeah.
I want to reconsider my comment about possession. I was thinking about some of the comments and about kings and did it mean people? And thinking about it, here you have the Israelites who were the possession of the Pharaoh for centuries. That's what they knew, but they weren't a treasured possession. They were maybe the bottom of the bottom. So now here's God coming along saying, you will be my treasured possession, and it's the model that they know. So I just wanted to kind of put that forward.
No, I think it's a really, it's a nice insight. It's the model they know, and you're going from being the lowest of a human being to the highest of God. But that's not bad. That's a step up in the world,
Yeah.
But there is a demand here, right? You have to follow the covenant. You have to be a treasured people, and then he says you have to be a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. So if you have time on your own, I would read the last comment of Orach Chaim, where he said, what does it mean to be this treasured people? It's going up and raising the sparks wherever you can. So it's like we walked into a good deal, a deal where we're going to be protected, a deal where we're going to be the best. We're going to be a treasured possession. I don't want to say the best, because that's not true. But it was a good deal, but it also requires something of us. It's not a one-way. God didn't just say, I'm going to give you everything you ever want. I'm going to give you the biggest house and the biggest everything, and I'm just gonna protect you and you just do whatever you want. God said, okay, I'm gonna do this for you, but you gotta be holy. You gotta do your best to raise the sparks. And this is the progression of the relationship from we're slaves, and we had this God we heard about a long time ago. Who is he? And suddenly new God is revealed, and God has a new name, and this name was able to pull us out of Egypt and to part the waters of the sea and do wonderful miracles. And now this God is saying to us, you have a choice. You have a choice. You don't have to do this. It's not go walk free in the desert. I don't care. I brought you here. You could not do this, right? That's the basis of the whole thing. You have a choice whether there's a mountain above your head perhaps, but you have a choice whether to enter into this relationship. This day I've been waiting for, because this is my way of making the world whole again through you. Will you be my treasured people, and I will be your God, and you will be holy, and I'll protect you. And this is why all of this stuff happened. And I'm raising you out of being the lowest of Pharaoh to being the highest of God. You have no idea what this is going to mean in any way, but tell me, what will you do? Will you marry me?
Yeah, well, and that one,
I'm gonna be you're gonna refer to me as your treasure, but you gotta eliminate the possession part.
Yeah.
your treasure.
The business of the sparks is a metaphysical sort of riff, right? I mean, that's not part of the central dogma or anything that we know anything about. That's sort of a hypothesis.
It's Kabbalah, and I'll go into next time because I have to run. But we'll keep our sparks ignited in all of our relationships until next time. And we revisit the Parsha again.
Good.
Thank you so much.
Very
Thank
good.
you.
Thank you,
Thank you,
everybody.
everybody.
Thank you. Good
Very-
week.
Fascinating.
Thank you. The highlight of my day.
Oh, wonderful.
Oh, nice.
Thank you.